Welcome to the Changeville Podcast, the first podcast focusing on social changemakers in music, comedy, and the arts. Every episode of the podcast will feature me, Brandon Telg, and the members of the Changeville team diving deep into an artist's work, showcasing how they are at the forefront of changing our world as artists. If you're not familiar with Changeville, it's a social change festival that takes place in Gainesville, Florida in the spring of each year. Before we get started discussing this week's featured artist, I'd like to talk with you a little bit more about what Changeville is all about. With the mission of cultivating connections between artists, influencers, and activists, Changeville is a festival that showcases and connects those who use music, comedy, film, virtual reality, and storytelling as a vehicle to drive self-awareness and social change. Held in partnership with Frank, a community of changemakers who gather each year in Gainesville, Florida, and share a common goal of creating positive social impact through the use of strategic communications, Changeville is where artists and activists who believe in a better world meet. In previous years, Changeville has featured bands such as Charles Bradley and his Extraordinaires, the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, the Mountain Goats, and Hooray for the Riff Raff. The artists featured at Changeville may come from all corners of the stylistic landscape, but they all share one thing in common. Their work empowers others and changes the world. This podcast is designed to help expand Changeville beyond just a once-a-year showcase of changemakers in the arts to something you can experience year-round, learning more about the artists making a difference in our world. Our first featured band is Cloud Cult. Cloud Cult is a band that has consistently paved the way for artists wanting to go green. In fact, Rolling Stone lists them as one of the 10 greenest bands in music today. Cloud Cult, the brainchild of Minnesota's Craig Minowa, is an independent band whose sound is somewhat hard to describe. Genres like art rock, indie folk, and baroque pop get cited when describing their music, with comparisons to bands like Arcade Fire, Sufjan Stevens, Modest Mouse, and the Flaming Lips. As of 2016, Cloud Cult has released 9 studio albums, an EP, a live album, and 3 films, all of hyper-literate, orchestrated pop and rock songs. Seeing Cloud Cult live is also a unique experience because the band includes among the members on stage live painters. Connie Minowa and Scott West paint an original piece during each performance, which is auctioned off at the end of the show. So how is Cloud Cult changing the world? Cloud Cult is doing pretty much everything they can to leave no carbon footprint through their work. Craig Minowa created a non-profit music label called Earthology Records. The label's buildings, located on a small organic farm in Minnesota, are powered by geothermal and wind energy, and their recording studio was partially constructed with recycled and salvaged wood and plastic. The label only uses recycled materials for its CDs. How does that happen, one might ask? Well, Earthology sources donated jewel cases and then hand cleans and reuses them. According to the Austin Chronicle, instead of using bubble wrap or styrofoam for shipment packing, Earthology's interns collect fallen maple and oak leaves. They're also working to be the first label to use non-toxic, biodegradable, corn-based shrink wrap for CDs. The band's merchandise is 100% post-consumer recycled or made of certified organic materials, and all profits from the label are donated to environmental charities. The band also tours in a biodiesel van, which along with other carbon offsetting methods like installing solar panels on their van and purchasing carbon offsets, helps make Cloud Cult's tours carbon neutral. On top of all of this, Craig Minowa is an environmental scientist. While researching his environmental work, I found a great deal of Craig's writing for the Organic Consumers Association, a non-profit public interest organization based in Minnesota campaigning for health, justice, and sustainability. In his own words, his environmental work involves analyzing and interpreting scientific studies and communicating with consumers, members, and the public regarding research findings. The deeper you dig into the environmental work of Craig Minowa specifically and Cloud Cult in general, you find that they are really paving the way for bands, whether they be independent or on a major label, to be more eco-friendly. There are few bands out there as dedicated to making an impact through their art and not making an impact on the environment, as Cloud Cult is. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the work of this week's Changeville Changemaker. We'll be back soon with another episode of the Changeville Podcast. If you'd like to stay tuned to the Changeville Podcast and learn more about artists making a difference in the world, as well as keeping up with what's going on with the Changeville Festival, subscribe to us on iTunes or just like Changeville on Facebook. If you liked what you heard this week, please go leave a review on iTunes. It really helps us out. Until next time, this is Brandon, signing out. The Changeville Podcast theme song was written by Jason Shaw, and make sure to check out changeville.us to learn more about the festival.